I know some of you guys are going to get in the comments and say, Anton, that's unfair, comparing the two. Alright you guys, welcome back to Anton's class. I'm going to go ahead and jump into this video. If you're new here, my name's Anton, and I'm all about helping you discover more freedom through travel and life abroad, on a budget. So if that interests you, I would love to have you subscribe, and I would love to have you back here and be a part of this community. I'm drinking just iced water, basically, with some frozen peaches, and some lime and apple juice. It is hot and it's summer up here in Phoenix, Arizona. Anyways, this video is not about Phoenix, Arizona. Of course, it's about Namibia versus South Africa. Now, I know this is a potentially controversial topic, but trust me, I'm not going to make it controversial. I'm going to be very respectful. And you guys, please engage in the comments, share your opinion, share your tips, your advice, and all that good stuff. All right? And of course, these are two different countries, and I don't like to compare countries in a way, in a sense, because they're two different experiences. However, this video is to help people who are trying to make decisions about traveling to Southern Africa or potentially even relocating permanently to Southern Africa. I get a lot of emails from you guys asking questions about Namibia and South Africa. Now, of course, I spent a lot more time in Namibia, okay? So keep that in mind as I'm reviewing these topics. But I did spend a month in the Johannesburg area, and I was trying to live there, not as a tourist, but I was trying to experience what life would be like for me if I did decide to go and relocate to South Africa. And I know a month is not a whole lot of time, but it did give me a semi-accurate experience, all right? For someone like me, okay? The kind of neighborhoods that I was frequenting, the kind of experiences that I was enjoying, going to farmers markets on the weekends, taking the Rao train, using public transportation, you know, going to affordable restaurants, okay? Because in going to the grocery store, of course, I stayed at Airbnbs that had kitchens, and I did most of my eating via cooking, okay? So I didn't eat out very much. I definitely was buying local produce and vegetables and grains and beans and all that stuff and cooking. So, yes, I did have a semi-realistic experience of what life would be like for me or someone else like me coming from the United States, okay? Anyways, you guys, let's go ahead and get into this video. A quick shout out to this book by Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. I finished reading this back in January, but I was rereading little snippets of it because I'm actually going to make a video talking about a very juicy, interesting topic about South Africa, Namibia, having to do with apartheid. So go ahead and subscribe so you can be aware of when I upload that video. But today, we're not talking about that, all right? We're talking about comparing Namibia to South Africa. And again, I'm doing this for the benefit of those of you watching, those who are my classmates, and those who are seriously interested in traveling or moving to Southern Africa, all right? So let's get started. First point, infrastructure. So South Africa and Namibia have a similar history, and they both have great infrastructure. Namibia used to be part of South Africa, and so the infrastructure and the system there is very similar, all right? The road systems and the airports, they have a train in Namibia as well. So speaking of Namibia right now, they have a lot of airports, including smaller regional airports. And so I personally never got to experience flying from Hosea Kotako to a smaller regional airport. I did fly into Hosea Kotako, of course, and that was a pleasant experience. It's a smaller airport, but it's functional, it's clean, and it's good. It's a nice airport, all right? So no issues there. Everything was great, and the infrastructure in Namibia is definitely top notch, all right? Same for South Africa. I flew into the airport in Johannesburg. I forgot what it's called, okay? But I flew into that airport there in Johannesburg. And of course, I was all around Johannesburg, the suburbs, and Pretoria, and the infrastructure also is superb. And of course, both countries have infrastructure, roads, fantastic roads that will take you from the major cities all the way out into the countryside. Roads connecting all the major cities. So that is something good to know. All right, so you won't have an issue there. They both have multiple airports throughout the country. They both have train systems and all that good stuff. All right. However, what I will say is that South Africa had the Gau train, and I rode it all the time. I used it as like one of my primary forms of transportation while in Johannesburg and Pretoria. Namibia does not have a Gau train, and I have to say it is probably because their population is much, much smaller. All right. The population of South Africa and Joburg and Gauteng alone, I believe, is bigger than the whole country of Namibia. So it makes sense that the South African infrastructure is going to be broader. There's going to be more, and it's going to be more robust. All right. So they have a Gau train. Namibia does not, and that's okay because the population is smaller. But for infrastructure, I'm going to have to give a point to South Africa. All right. Because it did have the addition of the Gau train and a little bit better public transportation, in my opinion. Okay. And I'm a type of person who is leaning more towards green and environmentalism. And so I personally would like to live somewhere where I would not have to rely on a car. You do not have to rely on a car in Namibia. You can use the taxis. But I will say personally, in my opinion, I think the public transportation was more robust in South Africa, which makes sense because it's a bigger country. So keep that in mind. All right. So moving on to number 2. Let me take a sip. Now, this one's kind of related to infrastructure, but it has to do with international flight availability. So when I first went to Namibia, I flew there from Rwanda. As you guys know, if you've been with Anton's class for a while, I was living in Rwanda at first, Kigali, Rwanda, beautiful country. And then I left Rwanda and flew down to Windhoek. Now, of course, there were no direct flights, unfortunately, from Kigali, Rwanda to Windhoek, Namibia. Namibia doesn't have so many direct international flights, okay? For example, it doesn't have any to the United States. It has a couple to Europe, all right, and a couple to other African countries, which we'll get into. But coming from Rwanda, I had to first fly into Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, another beautiful place, by the way. And then from Addis Ababa, I flew down to Windhoek, Namibia. South Africa has a lot more international flights, all right? South Africa has direct flights all the way to New York, direct flights to DC, direct flights to Atlanta, and I believe direct flights to Miami, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It has several direct flights to Europe, including Frankfurt, Germany, which is another place I've visited. And that's what I flew into. That's how I flew into South Africa, from Frankfurt, Germany. And South Africa also has direct flights to, I believe, Cairo, Addis Ababa. It has direct flights to, I believe, Nairobi. Of course, to Windhoek, Namibia. So one of the international hubs that a lot of flights from Namibia fly are to South Africa. All right. But South Africa also has direct flights to Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey. All right. And many more destinations. All right. So when it comes to international flights, unfortunately, if you're going to Namibia from the U.S. or a lot of places outside of Africa, you're not going to get a direct flight. So that is going to be a point for South Africa. I love you, Namibia, but again, it has to do with the smaller population, you guys. So I know some of you guys are going to get in the comments and say, Anton, that's unfair, comparing the two. One is way smaller. It's okay, you guys. I understand one is way smaller. But again, it's good for people to see these things. And sometimes people will say, Anton, thank you for sharing this information, because those are some small things I may not have considered, all right, when choosing a country. So especially if you're traveling with kids, or if you don't feel like having a lot of connecting flights, then South Africa is going to have to win that one. All right, let me take one more sip. All right. I hope you guys are still in there. Hit that subscribe button, please, if you haven't already. Some of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed to Anton's class. Please hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and I would really appreciate it. hit the bell notification as well. So, number 3 has to do with cleanliness, okay? I got to experience, like I said, in South Africa, only 2 cities and suburbs. And Namibia, I experienced about 2 cities as well and suburbs, okay? But I was living in Namibia longer. South Africa, I wanted to experience Cape Town and other cities, which I will one day, God willing. But I will say that when I arrived in South Africa, I was super excited. I got to the airport, saw the statue of Nelson Mandela and all that stuff. And then as I exited the airport, I waited for a cab, got in a cab, and I'm going to be honest, the cab drivers were sometimes kind of scary, you know, and aggressive. Anyways, I caught a cab, and as soon as we pulled out of the airport, there was trash everywhere in that area of Kempton Park, okay, in Johannesburg. That was not a pleasant sight when you first arrive into a country, okay? It sets a bad precedent. Again, I understand a lot of people have other pressing issues, okay? Sometimes people aren't really concerned with littering or that sort of thing when they're trying to make rent, trying to find employment, right? There's high unemployment and all that stuff. However, it is something that I have to bring up, okay? Once we left Kempton Park, I have to say South Africa was incredibly clean, okay? Johannesburg was pretty clean. Namibia, arrived at the airport, which is way outside of the city, okay? Which is kind of sucks because you have to find a good ride and it costs. It's kind of costly, okay? From the airport to Windhoek proper, because the airport is many, many miles outside of Windhoek in Namibia, okay? There is a smaller airport in Windhoek, but I don't think any international flights fly into that little airport. Anyways, I arrived. Beautiful scenery when you arrive at the airport in Namibia. You see that sort of stereotypical African look in the distance, the savanna, the grassland. You can see the acacia trees. It's stunning. It's beautiful. The mountains, very beautiful. The clear blue skies, all right, very clean air everywhere you look. And then you drive into the city, and guess what? No trash along the roads, no graffiti, no garbage, crisp and clean. The entire time I was in Windhoek, very clean. They had cleaning crews that would come out in the morning. I believe they worked for the city, of course, or the country or the state. And they would come in and clean the streets every morning. So Namibia was incredibly clean. Swakopmund, very clean. Every little city I stopped on the way to Swakop, very clean. So Namibia, ching ching, you get that one. Namibia, not only were the streets clean, there was no graffiti anywhere. The air was so clean. Okay, the air in Johannesburg is quite dirty and questionable in the dry season. Okay, I was in the dry season in Namibia and the air was far superior. Again, population is much smaller, so that makes sense. These are things you guys can consider as you're weighing your options. Do I want a smaller population and what comes along with that? Or do I want a bigger population and what comes along with that? There are pros and cons to both. So that goes to Namibia. No, next one, I believe this is number 4. Activities and excursions, okay? Namibia has a couple of farmers markets here and there. It has beaches, beautiful, stunning beaches at Swakop and Walvis Bay. It has some hiking trails. It has a safari or two. It has malls, okay? You could have the village experience in the north. Most of the nature in Namibia, by the way, though, is desert or semi-arid. So keep that in mind. When you're thinking about excursions and nature, South Africa has hundreds of farmers markets all the time. Way more beaches, way more, okay? Way more beaches, way more trails, way more nature activities, way more like extension bridges and all these things, way more diversity in the scenery. It has forests, tons of forests, and rolling plains, and highlands and lowlands, and rivers and mountains, and very dramatic mountains. And then it has the high mountains, what is it, the Drakensberg that surround Lesotho. All right, so I will say that, and it has safaris, of course, as well. So when it comes to activities and excursions, for someone who loves nature like myself and loves diversity of scenery, not just desert, South Africa, you get another point for that one, all right? Love Namibia, but you have to keep in mind it's mostly desert, all right? Moving on. Number 5, safety. This is a huge one for a lot of people, really for everyone. And let's go ahead and get into it. So, thankfully, thank God, nothing happened to me. And not to suggest that something's bound to happen when you go to those countries, because most people live their lives and they're good, right? But I just say thank God because I'm a man of faith, all right? And anything could happen. So I say thank God, nothing happened to me, right? Namibia, great time. I was safe. I'm a safe person. Carry yourself accordingly, no matter what city you're in, okay? Same with South Africa. Had a fantastic time. No issues whatsoever. Felt incredibly safe, and I was. I know that's not the experience for everyone, and I acknowledge that. But my experience was such that I was safe and had no issues. Now, of course, if you look at the statistics, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, and Namibia is leading. That creates an environment where people are going to be unsafe. People who are desperate, right? When you have high inequality, you're going to have some issues there, naturally. So keep that in mind. But I will say that if you look at the statistics and the crime rates, Namibia, ching, you win that one. All right, Namibia is a little bit safer than South Africa. Of course, they both have safe areas and not so safe areas, and I had no issues. Okay, I kind of blended in, like I always say in my videos. I look Namibian, I could pass as a Namibian. I look South African, I could pass as a South African. All right, I looked Ethiopian, I passed as Ethiopian there. Rwanda was the only place in Africa where people were like, that is Muzungu right there, okay? Anyways, you guys, moving on to what number is this? Let me turn my little cheat sheet around. Power outages, okay? You guys already know where this one's going. I'm trying to speed through. Someone said, Anton, you talk so fast. Do you have a mental disability? And they tried to spot diagnose me, which is so ignorant. But anyways, no, I talk fast because I'm running short on storage, and I know people have shorter attention spans, myself included. So, power outages. Namibia, while I was living there, guess how many power outages there were? Just take a guess. I'll give you a sec. 0. No power outages whatsoever. Incredibly stable power. In South Africa, guess how many power outages I had? And I was in South Africa much less time, right? There were 3, okay? Load shedding. They were smaller ones, as I've talked about in another video. I was fortunate. I was in Midrand at the time, I believe, or halfway house in the Johannesburg area near Mall of Africa, and they only had 3 short ones at night, and they tell you they were timed, okay, according to the neighborhood. So it wasn't too bad. I had my Netflix downloaded, YouTube downloaded, all that stuff. But power outages are a serious issue in South Africa, so that's something to keep in mind. Namibia, you win that one, of course. Check mark next to Namibia. Okay. Next one, we're going to move on. Okay, I hope you guys are still in there. I'm going to remind you one more time. Hit that subscribe button. Okay, I would love to have you back. Media. Now, as you guys know, South Africa's media is huge. Blood and Water was filmed in South Africa. Raised by Wolves, which was an HBO series filmed in South Africa. You have episodes of Black Mirror filmed in South Africa. I believe I was watching The Witcher, and I was like, that looks like South Africa. So I bet, I'm going to look it up, okay? That was filmed in South Africa. You have, of course, so Netflix has studios there. All these studios are in South Africa. So South Africa has a booming film media industry, okay? It's one of the powerhouses on the African continent, all right? And, of course, Lagos, Nigeria as well. But I'm not really into Nollywood movie. I've given them a try. I have ancestry from Nigeria. So my Nigerian peeps watching this, I'm sorry, I'm not really into Nollywood. Nigeria has huge, huge potential, but the Nollywood scene is not for me. Okay, South Africa's winning the game when it comes to African media, in my opinion. Okay, I even prefer South African music. Next one. Future prospects. Okay, so this is a big one. So, you guys, I think both countries have some serious issues. South Africa's unemployment has increased in the past year. Namibia's has increased as well. So those are things to consider. All right. Climate change is going to affect both countries. Namibia, though, it's probably going to affect a little bit worse. It's going to make it hotter and drier. especially in the north, which is a very sensitive climatic zone already. Parts of KwaZulu-Natal are going to become wetter. It's already a very wet region and there's flooding there, so that's something to consider. But when it comes to food and growing crops, moisture obviously is more important, and you could mitigate that maybe a little easier, maybe, than drier, hotter climates. Another thing when it comes to future prospects to consider is, are you more progressive? Both countries are leaning more towards progressive measures on the African continent. South Africa has legalized same-sex marriage for years. Namibia just recently, this year, recognized same-sex marriages that were done outside of the country, if that makes sense. Okay, so those are things to consider as well when you're weighing your options and thinking about future prospects of the country and the direction that these countries are taking. Okay, so anyways, you guys, it looks like we have a winner. All right, that last one, future prospects, I'm actually going to give to Namibia. Oopsies, I actually meant South Africa. Sorry, Namibia. Ting ting. And I haven't been keeping track of the points, so you see the clear winner. I don't know what it is right now, but it's going to be on the screen, okay? So you guys, I hope that this has helped you consider some things when it comes to choosing a country to visit or relocate to. I highly recommend you visit both countries, honestly, though, okay? So I personally would kind of give them a tie. I lean more towards South Africa because there's more activities, more nature, and I love that kind of thing. And I'm also kind of loving the fact that they have a lot of media, and to me that means a lot more opportunities. Amazon is in South Africa, and they're going to build a headquarters there as well. So and what happens in South Africa really does affect Namibia. Okay, so that's also something to keep in mind. Excuse me. So you guys, which one did you choose? Which one would be your winner? Are you going to lean more towards a densely populated country, or a country that has a higher population, I mean? Or are you going to lean more towards a country that has a much smaller population, is much less densely populated, Namibia? Okay, because there's pros to being less populated, less pollution, right, less crime, but there are cons. Okay, less activities, less to do, you know, and what comes along with that, right? So pros to South Africa: bigger population, more to do, bigger population, more crime. Okay, so anyways, you guys, these are things to consider. I love both countries, honestly, and I think they both have a lot of potential. I'm going to be making a subsequent video talking about the future of South Africa, my personal projection and my idea about that. All right, and I hope you guys stay tuned and subscribed to Anton's class already. If you haven't, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like this video if it helped you in any way, shape, or form, and please do engage in the comments. All right, if you have any questions, please go ahead and email me, antonsclass1@gmail.com, and I will be happy to be in touch with you. Serious inquiries only, please, you guys. All right, while I'm flattered with the occasional little flirt email, I'm happily taken off the market with a beautiful Namibian. So yes, serious inquiries only with the emails, okay? And I hope to see you guys back here next time on Anton's class, okay?